Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Scrappy Piano Teacher podcast. My name is Jacqueline Morozic, but of course you can call me Jackie. And if you are new here, welcome. I created this podcast for independent music teachers who love teaching, want their students to thrive, but also want to be able to, pay your bills and maybe, order yourself a sweater every now and then. And if that's you, I'm so glad that you are here. So today we are going to be talking about studio analytics. Yep, studio analytics. What are those? Well, I'm going to tell you. That's what today is all about. And I do want to say this right off the bat, that this is not going to be super businessy. I'm going to try to make it not super businessy for you, but it is going to be all about looking at your studio with more clarity so that you can actually be more profitable and sustainable long term. I also want you to listen to this episode less like a checklist of sorts and more like a conversation. You don't need to do all of this at once. You don't need to fix anything today. This episode is really about noticing and starting to pay attention. And if it's something that you are interested in starting, you can start taking the steps to be able to reflect on data later on, like the end of this school year. This is something that a lot of independent music teachers have never done or have never been taught to do. And that includes teachers who are brand new and teachers who have been teaching for 10, 20, even 30 plus years. So there's no shame in that at all. Most of us are trained to simply teach music, not to analyze how our studios function or how to run a business. But if you've ever had that feeling of loving teaching and still thinking, am I doing this right? Is this really how I'm supposed to be doing it? Then I hope that this episode helps you. For those of you who might not know this about me, or maybe you haven't been listening since the very beginning of this podcast, my path into teaching was a little different. I was fortunate enough to start teaching when I was 14 years old. That does not mean that I was qualified by any means, but I was brought into the studio where I was taking lessons. So I was mentored by my teacher, the other teachers, and it was very much a family. In fact, the studio itself was a family, and they brought in a few of us to teach and mentor us, and it was incredibly supportive. It was an incredible experience, and all of us younger teachers really grew up together in that space. And actually, I met my husband because of one of the teachers there. So obviously, it was a very positive experience. And honestly, sometimes I really wonder if I ever would have thought I could be a piano teacher at all if it wasn't for them. And I did all the things. I did the competitions, I did auditions, I got scholarships. And then when it came time to make decisions about school, as in college, I wanted to take a little break and have some, good old teenager fun, you know. And then that little bit of fun, it quickly turned into getting married just a little too young, having two babies almost immediately, back to back, and then getting divorced almost just as quickly. And I found myself to be a single mom of two babies at the ripe old age of 21 years old. And during that time, I never stopped teaching piano. I might have only had one student for about 2 years as I was, having babies at a really young age, but I was still teaching piano. Now, once I was a fully single mom, 100% on my own, I was very fortunate to get a temp job at a corporate office where they later on hired me and even paid for me to go to school for project management. So for 7 years, my life looked like school in the way too early hours because it was a hybrid of online and in person. I would get the kids ready, take them to daycare. I would go to my full-time job at the office. Then I would pick up my kids. I would take them to my parents' house, and then I would drive to students' homes. And actually, funny story, I was on the Piano Pantry podcast recently with Amy Chaplin, and I was telling her that I was a driving teacher for a while, and she was like, "What?" She thought that I meant like driving school, which I thought was really funny. So I guess I should say I was a traveling teacher where I would drive to the students' homes and teach them out of their home. Anyway, I thought that was funny. Eventually, thank God, I was able to transition into full-time teaching. Now, this was something that I thought I had totally blown this chance by, having so much fun. I thought that chance was just gone. But it wasn't. And I was able to get a certification to teach music together, which gave me a lot of confidence. I met a lot of teachers that I was like, wow, these are my people, man. It was great. It was so exciting. I was able to get a spot at a local academy as a teacher. I got more training. I got some certifications through the RCM. I attended local conferences. I joined local teacher groups. I even took lessons myself. So teaching has always been a part of my life, but this was a really exciting time because I was like ready to go. And I think also of reflecting on how I thought that I had totally thrown my chance away at having a life of music by making very immature decisions. I was given that gift of a second chance, and I really, really didn't want to blow it. But I'm also really grateful for my journey because of the office that I worked at and the work that I was given to do and my job role and going to school for project management and business. And that's why I have this podcast, because I'm able to share some of the things that I've learned and some of what I put into my own studio along the way and pass it on to you. So it's really interesting. The thing that we're talking about today, it still slips through the cracks, even for me. And it definitely slips through the cracks for a lot of teachers that I help and that I coach who have incredible music educations that I'm a little jealous of, but they were never taught how to run a business. Most of them have learned on the job as they go. So if this feels unfamiliar of what we're going to talk about today, that would make some sense. And one quick reminder, I know that I talk about this in a lot of episodes, but I'm going to say it again. If you're collecting money and counting on that money to pay your bills, your studio is a real small business. It is just as much of a small business as the Pilates studio down the street or the pizza place that hopefully you are grabbing dinner from tonight. Healthy and successful small businesses are intentional about looking at their data, and we need to be as well. They look at things like predictable income, operating costs, client retention. So for us, that would be student retention, whether their offerings align with the clients that they want to serve, and what happens after they make changes. I think that this can sound overwhelming for a lot of teachers that maybe have never done this before, but I promise it's not. So we're going to go ahead and shift all of that into piano teacher language. First of all, let's go ahead and talk about predictable income. So this is where even billing tuition can be incredibly helpful. I usually recommend to teachers doing a 9-month or a 12-month, but the idea is that you're going to take the total number of lessons you're teaching over that time period. You're going to subtract any flex weeks that you want or any breaks or any makeup credits that you want to give. You're going to take that number, divide it evenly by either the 9 months or the 12 months, and you're going to create a consistent monthly amount for families. I know that there are a lot of teachers out there who absolutely love monthly billing, and it's really flexible for them and their students, and that's totally fine. I'm not shaming you at all. This is just for the point of clarity, especially if you're going to look at your studio analytics. When your income is predictable, you can answer important questions more easily, like, am I making enough money to support my life and pay my bills? Do I actually need more students, or do I already have the number of students that I want, but my tuition needs to change? You can also start seeing patterns. So a pattern that we can all pretty much expect to see are summer dips in our income. That's to be expected. That's just an example. But when you start looking at these and suddenly you see some surprises, that's a sign where it's like, you know what? I didn't actually know that this was happening. That's when you want to take a closer look. If you've never actually written down what a normal month looks like in your studio, that alone might feel eye-opening. So this is my first episode back in January of 2026. Happy New Year, by the way. If you have never done this before, maybe just look back from a year ago. Maybe that is too overwhelming. So maybe just start in August or September, and then you'll be able to really reflect when you get to May. It can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like a lot of work, but this is actually a really good time to do it, especially during tax time, because you're already going to be going through a lot of 2025 and all those months. And just remember, when we're not comfortable, it usually means that we're learning something new. And I feel like I'm just never comfortable. So I guess I'm just learning all the time, right? I don't know. Okay. So next up is operating costs. And this is where it gets me all the time. And when I'm doing my studio analytics, I'm like, oh, Jackie, you did it again. This is where some of us teachers really quietly lose money without even realizing it. So here's some basic questions that you might want to ask yourself. Who is paying for the books? Are you going to pay for the books, or are you going to have students buy their own books? Either is fine. It just depends on what works best for you. But if you are the one fitting the bill for music, method books, supplemental books, that kind of thing, are you charging a registration fee? And does that fee actually cover what you're genuinely spending? So this was something that I really had to change last year, because last year was my first year of providing the books for the students, because I always thought it was a lot easier to just send them an Amazon link or the link to the website where I wanted them to buy a book and they would buy it on their own, which really was fine. It's not that big of a deal, but it's work. You got to send it to the parent, and then the parent's like, oh, I forgot to do it. And then, a month later, maybe you have the books in time. I just find it a lot easier to do it on my own at this point. But I knew at the end of the year that I was paying far more for the books than what I actually got in my registration fees. So I did double those fees at the beginning of this year so that I could cover all of those book costs. So that's just an example of it. Another example would be if you're putting on special events like recitals or gatherings. I think people are getting a little bit more out of the box these days with performance venues, not your traditional recitals. So what is that costing you? What about printing? What about programs? What about binding music? Are you buying studio licenses and then printing that off? You got to buy the paper, you got to buy the toner or the ink. What about, are you doing student gifts? Are you subscribing to any Patreons or other professional development sites, or doing professional development on the side, which is not cheap? The list goes on and on and on and on. And then you want to ask the big question, am I actually making the money I think I'm making, or is this job actually costing me money? And I think that's a very fair question with what we do, because the lines can get really blurred very easily. So that's where yours truly gets stuck in the mud a little bit. Okay, so here's something that maybe some of you get stuck with, and that is student retention patterns. And this one can be a little emotionally heavy, and that's normal. But you want to think about this. How long do students typically stay in your studio? So how many students did you have a year ago? What about 2 years ago? What about 5 years ago? 10 years ago? Who is staying? Are your ideal students sticking around? Or maybe the students where you're kind of like, okay, I'll teach you for another year or two. So who's staying? What kind of students are you attracting? Who is leaving? Are your ideal students the ones who are leaving? And when are they leaving? Are they leaving at that typical time that might happen at the end of the school year? Are they leaving in the middle of school year? Are they leaving before school starts? Every studio loses students over time. That's normal. We're all going to go through it. We're all going to be sad about it. It's just a part of what we do. But what is going to matter is whether you're seeing patterns or a huge dip all of a sudden. Sometimes that data tells you something that you don't want to hear. And yeah, that can sting. I have cried in the shower about students leaving before, a couple times, but the numbers themselves are not personal, they're information. And this is where I really want you to separate your identity as a teacher from the information your studio is giving you, because the data is not saying that you're a bad teacher, it's just telling you what's happening. And this is going to lead into studio alignment. And this is something that I find really, really interesting because of a situation that happened to me last year. I've always wanted to try having a group lesson studio. Like my whole piano studio is group lessons. I just wanted to try it. And I thought, I'm going to make this work. We're going to do this. And I did it. I transitioned my entire studio, except for some of my high schoolers, into group lessons. And it was really exciting because when enrollment opened, I immediately had 25 new students join right off the bat. I was totally maxed out. My waiting list just went boom, 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 boom. It was exciting. It was really busy, and financially it was fantastic. I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to be teaching less. I'm going to have more students. I'm going to make more money. We're going to make this work. It's going to be super, super fun. And it was a great year. At the end of the school year, as we headed into summer though, and it was time for summer registration. Now I am a 12-month even billing studio, but we do change the schedule in the summer. So when I sent it out, I had 10 students leave. And they knew that if they left, there was a high probability that they wouldn't get their spot back. That's my rule. Like if you take the summer off, I'm not going to hold a spot for you. That usually keeps them there. And usually there's not a spot back when they come. So, but yeah, I had 10 students leave and that never happens to me. I usually have very strong retention. So I was really, really shocked. And when I stepped back and I talked to the parents and I looked at the data, it actually made total sense because those students joined because they loved the group model. They wanted something more casual. They weren't looking for a long-term piano commitment. And so I actually didn't take it personally that they were all leaving. It made total sense because I was offering something that actually wasn't aligning with me as a teacher. I unintentionally sent a message about my studio that attracted the wrong students for the kind of teacher I am. I love those students. We had a great time, but that growth wasn't sustainable. Looking back, I'm actually really glad I tried it because now I know exactly what kind of growth works for me and what doesn't, and what kind of group lessons to offer in the future for specific students. But I will say, because of my 12-month tuition structure, I did experience an income dip that I wasn't planning for at all. Was I able to get some students from my waiting list? Yes, I was, but I was trying to have a nice summer too, and I wasn't trying to start like a ton of new students. So that's just an example of what alignment will show you. Now, once you've looked at these areas, the final step really is just making sense of what you're seeing. What patterns keep showing up? What changed when I tried something new? Who stayed? Who left? And what is that telling me? So it's not about judging yourself as a teacher. This is where imposter syndrome can seriously creep in. It's more about understanding your studio as a whole. When you're in it, it's hard to see it. When you're able to take a step back and look at it from a different lens, it can makes so much more sense. Most of the time, the goal is not going to be a massive overhaul. It's just small little course corrections. And you can't make those if you don't know where you are. So if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, I get this, but how am I supposed to find all of these numbers? This is going to be a lot of work. This is where I tell teachers to get some studio software. Or at least I think it can really help. Do you have to have it? No, you don't have to have it, but it really, really helps. A lot of teachers avoid it because they feel like they're not maybe serious enough yet, or they don't really need it. They can work around it, or maybe they just don't want to pay money because I think piano teachers, I like to spend money, but I feel like the majority of other piano teachers don't like to spend money. It just really makes patterns easier to see. Personally, I use my music staff. I've used it for over a decade. It works great for me. I can print reports. I can see everything I need to see really, really easily. So if you're interested in that, I do have a 60-day free trial link. If you want to explore it, you do not have to commit to it. You can even try it with just a handful of students and see how it feels. It's totally optional. The big takeaway today is this: the numbers are not telling you what to do. They're just helping you decide what to do with some confidence and with some clarity. And if you're looking for more support, I host workshops and meetups throughout the year, and you're always welcome to join us at scrappypianoteacher.com. I also have some resources on the website if you're heading into 2026 and you're wanting some more clarity and sustainability in your studio. Please take a look and peruse around. You might find something that's helpful. And if you enjoyed today's episode, leaving a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify is one of the best ways to support the show and help other teachers find it too. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate you all the time, and I hope I see you next time. Bye.